Hey gang, I'm Roxane Webster.
And I'm Keith Alba. We're the owners and partners at my home team at Keller Williams Advantage.
And you have checked in for the Honest Hour.
Woohoo! Here we go. Yeah, the Honest Hour. This is our no spin take on the real estate industry in and around Denver. Yeah, that's the only spin that's allowed. It's just Roxanne's chair spin.
That's right. That's right. That's a controlled spin.
Yeah.
So, what are we talking about today, Keith?
Oh, we're talking about a fun topic. It's a great one, and everybody loves it. And they're excited when you bring it up. We're talking about mold today, Rox.
Mold, right? And how often do you hear mold doesn't grow in Colorado?
There is that misunderstanding that's out there, right?
Yeah, it, and I think, I've been asking about this because you and I have both had some experiences with mold lately. One, how often do we test for mold, right? When I was a kid growing up in the Midwest, we called it mildew. There was no such thing as a house that didn't have some mildew. And a lot of mold is not harmful, is not dangerous. And what on earth are we doing assessing that for people? We don't, right? But we're starting to see it more. And I think that's not because there's more mold. I think it's because more people are testing for it. And guess what? More people are suing about it. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, right. So I do some expert witness work as part of it. Not familiar with that. A real estate agent is getting sued or has been named in a lawsuit, and one side or the other will hire me to come in, or some other expert witness. I'm not the only one that's doing this stuff, but they'll come in and they'll hire me to come in and opine on the agent's standard of care, basically. Did they meet that or did they fail? And so the last couple of cases that I've gotten in that is failure to disclose. It was brought against both the seller and the agent, the listing agents on that, saying that they had actual knowledge of what is referred to as adverse material facts, and failed to disclose it. The contract clearly states that the seller is obligated to disclose any known adverse material facts, and it's got to be in writing. And there's state statutes that are in place for us as licensees that mirror that requirement. So if we know of something, we have to make sure it either gets disclosed by the seller or we have to do it on our own, right? Yeah. And so these cases have come from failure to disclose issues. And, for one, it was a pretty big case. I would say it was pretty easy for the plaintiffs, the people that brought the lawsuits, right? Because once they start digging into it, they contact and subpoena the insurance companies. And guess what? There happened to be a claim for a water intrusion and mold mitigation. And then you compare that to the seller property disclosure, which says nothing about either of those sorts of things. And that one still in process, but is challenging for it. And then another one was it's not quite mold, but it's asbestos, right? It's a carcinogenic piece that was in there. The seller had signed off on this waiver of saying, I'm okay with disturbing the asbestos to have it removed. I don't want to go through the full mitigation process, put that on file, but then failed to disclose to the buyer, that there was any known asbestos in the property previously. And so it just comes down to, on the selling side, absolutely sit down, take your time. I like the seller property disclosure. It's long, it's detailed, but it's really designed for a seller to kind of trigger their memories in certain areas, right? And saying, hey, did any of this ever occur? Any of these things happen? So there's got some questions that are part of in different sections and whatnot. So I like that. I think that's a great tool for sellers.
I love it too. And the thing I think about, because this is such a big issue, disclosure of material facts, right? And I counsel my sellers that you are selling a used house, right? And as such, it is inevitable that there are going to be some problems that you've encountered, water issues that you've had. On my house, we just had a drain problem, right? And that drain was dumping water right into the wall beneath me. Well, guess what? We replaced the wall and made sure it was all dried out. But if ever I sell this place, I would disclose that I had fixed it and that I had had the water event, right?
Right.
And that I had gone in there and treated with antifungal that was kind of prophylactic, right? But it's not like I'd say, oh, okay, well, I replaced the wall. I don't have to tell anybody that event ever happened, right?
Right.
I have to tell somebody that event happened and tell them what I did about it, right?
Right.
So now
And
if that's important to them, they can go do the added testing needed to feel comfortable about it.
right. And I think that's the biggest piece, right? I think sometimes sellers get in this mindset of, well, I don't want to tell too much because, it's not that big of a deal. We fixed that issue. And so I don't need to really tell them about that. And if I do tell them, it might affect their desire to still want to buy my house.
Yeah.
But the reality is I have never had a contract terminate right after delivery of a seller property disclosure.
That's right.
Right.
That's
There has been nothing that has ever been disclosed that scared a buyer so much that they said, oh, I'm out. Just get me out of this thing. I'm done. Right.
And I
So
think
load
it's
it up.
actually the opposite, right? When I we sold a house during the lockdown, deep lockdown, COVID, right? And because I knew that there was going to be restricted access to the house, I mean, literally, we'd leave the house, somebody would come look at the house, we'd disinfect the house. It was right at the beginning where nobody even knew if you could spread that with your hands, right?
Yeah.
And the seller's property disclosure that we filled out was a reminder to me of what that form should be, right? I had an inspector say, I've never seen such a thorough seller's property disclosure, right? And it didn't prevent it from getting sold. It actually informed the type of offer that the agent, that the buyer ended up making on the house. They knew they were buying a house with these flaws. They made an appropriate offer for that. They didn't beat us up over inspection items because I'd already over disclosed. I mean, there is no over disclosing. I'd already disclosed it every which way to Tuesday, every little fart in every little corner that had ever been in that 28 years of ownership. Right.
Yeah.
So it actually increased the buyer's trust and level with us to get such a thorough property disclosure.
100% agree. I think that, a thorough SPD, the seller property disclosure, builds trust in the transaction, right? They're like, okay, they're open, they're transparent, they're telling me everything that they know about this property, and it makes the buyer feel a little bit more comfortable.
So when we pull this back into buyers as well, the impact on buyers of the mold, environmental issues, disclosure issues, but particularly that mold thing, when I pulled together the parts of it, right, and say, okay, if there's been a major water event, an insurance claim, a roof, a roof claim, something where there was water
leaky
intrusion.
drain, a leaky supply line, which I had up in an upstairs bathroom, right? Or in my house, the compaction around the new construction after a few years kind of failed, and so there was some negative drainage that was heading. My window wells filled up, and that came into my basement. Those are all things that I know that happened. I've addressed them. They fixed them. They're not happening any longer, but absolutely need to be disclosed and put out there.
And if I were sensitive to mold and I were buying your house and you had disclosed that to me, then I would choose, in addition to my normal inspections,
Right.
I'm probably going to get an inspector in there. They've got inspectors that can literally sniff the air and tell you whether or not there's the content, any mold for content. So just because we're in a dry environment does not mean we don't have mold. Mold
Right.
needs three things. It needs moisture, it needs food, and it needs time. That's all.
Yeah.
And the
And
food is anything but concrete.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it happens, right?
Yeah.
It occurs. So.
Well, hit the subscribe button, share, like, the drill, and we'll see you again soon.